The GOP field for governor shrinks, the Democrats' field grows. Joining us on Columbus on the Record this week, Darrell Rowland, public affairs editor for the Columbus Dispatch, Julie Carr-Smythe, State House correspondent for the Associated Press, Mark Weaver, Republican strategist, and Sam Gresham of Common Cause, Ohio. After months and months of speculation about names, name recognition, fundraising ability, we finally have a candidate for a lieutenant governor. Jon Husted decided this week to drop his bid for governor and instead run for the second spot on a ticket behind Mike DeWine.
I'm so very, very proud and happy that Jon Husted agreed to be my running mate.
If I had continued my run for governor, Mike and I would have fought a brutal campaign that would have left the winner bruised and broken with only a few months to rebuild in time for the general election.
That means there are now 3 Republican candidates for governor: DeWine, Congressman Jim Renacci, and current Lieutenant Governor Mary Taylor, who called a news conference this week to say she's not going anywhere.
Mike DeWine is the past, and I will fight for Ohio's future. Those 2 individuals have been running for governor essentially since the time they were born.
Mark Weaver, I tend to think the reason why politicians leave races or decide not to run is they figure out they can't win. Is that the case here?
I think Jon Husted knew that Mike DeWine had a real strong edge. He's been in this party a long time. He's conservative. He's hard to beat. And I think Mike DeWine knew that Jon Husted can bring a strong resource, both in money and in experience of different sorts, and in a good, strong field operation. And they both realized it was in their mutual interest to move forward. And our party got a lot better with this ticket.
Why did Mike DeWine, did Jon Husted just defer to Mike DeWine because he's the more senior member of the party? I mean, because Jon Husted would bring a new face, relatively new face, to the ticket if he were on the #1 spot.
All the public polling showed that Mike DeWine was well ahead. And so the candidate who's well ahead is typically to be the one who has got the leverage to insist on being the governor. And I think Mike DeWine will make Jon Husted a strong partner as lieutenant governor. Not every lieutenant governor has been made a strong partner. And I think you'll see Mike and Jon do that together.
And if you looked at the field as it was, it wouldn't be in Mary Taylor's interest to partner up with Mike DeWine. She's already the lieutenant governor and has been for 2 terms. And it might make sense, though, for Jon Husted because he can still look at this as an upward trajectory of his political career, moving from the legislature into a statewide office and now into this spot. And he can position himself perhaps for that future run sooner, maybe rather than later, for governor.
Speaking of that, there's been some talk because of Mike DeWine's age. He's I think close to 70 years old. That he'd only serve 1 term. Is there anything to that talk that he would serve 1 term and then hand over to Jon Husted after 4 years?
Well, certainly nothing in public, but Jon Husted is basically 20 years Mike DeWine's junior. So in some ways, it's like your turn, Mike DeWine. You've been through all these offices, statewide, U.S. Senate. He's been lieutenant governor before. You get your 4 years or 8 years out of the way. Even if it's a full 8 years. Jon Husted's only 58. Yeah. At the end of that time, if he served well, if the state's doing well, if Republicans have a strong name brand like they do now, who knows? It's only 8 years in politics.
I think that's a plausible scenario. I hear the number thing, but I think they're preparing for a double dip, not just this 1 term of DeWine winning, or rather if he goes for the first term and gives it to Husted, or we go for 8 and 8, 16 years of this team dominating the government. And I agree with you, Mark. They're going to position Jon for the future. So I think it is a combination that Democrats really have to look at. How do you break this up? How do you go against this? And I think in today's marketplace, name recognition is such an important commodity.
That's true.
Yeah.
But Jon Husted was viewed as pretty strong against the Democrats in a general election compared to DeWine, who has a long history, which also, when you come with a long history, you come with a lot of potential baggage. But again, like when they team together, as everyone is saying, that can be a strong mix.
But Mark, people don't vote for the lieutenant governor. They vote for the governor. And
That's
I mean,
true.
this is the buzz this week. Two big name politicians joining forces. Eventually, it's going to be Mike DeWine running for governor. Will people really look at them as a team?
This is less about the voters, although John brings a lot for voters to consider. John Husted is a strong fundraiser and has great connections, particularly in the Miami Valley for fundraising. He has a very strong grassroots team and people around him who know how to organize at the grassroots level. So does Mike DeWine, for that matter. But those teams now have joined together and made a very formidable. In fact, that's what Kyle Kondik, who's a national pundit on politics and used to work for Richard Cordray, called this duo a formidable duo. And I think you're going to see them easily win this primary.
Do we see the other? Now, this you could call the DeWine Husted team the establishment team. And you could say Renacci and Taylor are the pro-Trump anti-establishment team. So do you see those two joining forces? Because that vote is now split now.
I don't think Taylor really ruled it out when she was asked directly about it. I haven't had a chance to ask the Renacci folks if he would be interested, but it would make sense for her to be at the top of that ticket if that were the case, because of the fact that there's really no other diversity on the Republican side. Should DeWine win the primary, all the other candidates down the ticket are white men, and so I think that she could make that argument to bring Renacci in.
What's the law on lieutenant governors? Is she term limited?
Yes.
I mean, because it's like you go in with the governor in a way, but you are elected.
Yeah, I think she could be. I don't think she would want to be LG. You mentioned Trump. I think it would come as a surprise to Team Trump that someone who had paired up with John Kasich on anything was a Trump candidate, because there's no love lost between Team Trump and Team Kasich. And for Jim Renacci, for a guy who spent the last several cycles in Washington, D.C., in an institution that is among the most hated of American institutions right now, it'll be hard for him to make the case that he's a candidate of the outside.
Is this a way for the establishment Republicans to not split the vote, Daryl, which was possible?
Sure, and now this sort of says, well, what is the real Republican Party like here in Ohio? 2016 still seems such an aberration when you have a candidate, Mr. Trump, just breaking all the rules as he did nationally, but certainly in Ohio too, for being the type of candidate the Ohioans do not usually support. Yet he wins Ohio by 8 points. So what is the real, well, what's the heart, what's the soul of the Ohio Republican Party, the Ohio Republican voter, more important? Is it going to be the establishment, or, because Renacci certainly has, I think, the anti-establishment feel pretty much to himself. Mary Taylor's done a laudable effort, but as Mark said, I mean, she's been in the legislature, she's been a statewide office holder for 12 years now. I don't know if she can make that.
Yeah.
And she's served alongside Kasich and has tried right out of the box. I know when she announced up at the Cleveland City Club, she tried to say, hey, I make my own decisions, I'm my own person. But then you can't quite have it both ways. You can't also then try to capitalize on the fact that John Kasich's fairly popular and you've had this legacy of time with him. So it's a trick for her.
I think the luster has worn off of the anti-establishment candidate opposing the establishment candidate, the dynamic duo that they've now put together. I don't think the luster is there. I don't think there's a lot of gravitas in being able to say I'm against the establishment.
We'll find out.
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
You truly have to be anti-establishment to be against the establishment. You can't say it. I mean, Trump proved that. He was not of the establishment. It never has been.
That was his success.
Yeah. Next topic. While the GOP race for governor thins, the Democratic race looks to get more crowded. Richard Cordray reportedly will announce his bid next week. No big surprise after he quit as head of the Federal Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. That means that there are now 6 Democrats running for governor. Cordray, Supreme Court Justice Bill O'Neill, former state rep Connie Pillich. They're joined by State Senator Joe Schiavone, former Congresswoman Betty Sutton, and Dayton Mayor Nan Whaley. Cordray's departure from Washington sparked one last controversy when he named his chief of staff to succeed him, and President Trump named Budget Director Mick Mulvaney. A federal judge for now has sided with Trump. To Richard Cordray joining this now large pool of candidates, how long does it stay at 6? Do you see any of them leaving soon?
Boy, we aren't getting any indications formally that they would. However, some of them were putting themselves out there as a way to raise their name ID. Someone like Joe Schiavone. I see maybe Connie Pillage not staying in because I would say Sutton and Whaley are probably the strongest of the existing field. As for Bill O'Neill, he said initially if Cordray got in, he would get out. Then he said if Cordray got in, maybe he wouldn't get out because he doesn't like Cordray's position on legalizing marijuana. So we really don't know if he's going to be in or out.
And we have that whole Facebook post, which was his debut on the campaign stage, talking about all the women that he's had relationships with. Sam?
And he's a serious candidate for governor by starting off with all these women he's had sex with.
He's the only Democratic statewide office holder, though, right now.
Yeah, I think the key indicator here will be two aspects. It's the 1% race between DeWine and Cordray. That's a key indicator.
2010.
Yeah. And then the other thing is raising money. Among the other candidates you just talked about, Cordray can raise the money. Now, whether, in my opinion, Cordray is the strongest candidate that they could have come up with, yes. In this field, Cordray is the strongest candidate.
Cordray can raise money. I've been the primary strategist in 3 statewide races against Cordray. I know him as well or better than anybody. He can raise money. He's getting into this so late. A lot of people have lined up with other candidates. A lot of unions and traditional Democrat constituencies have lined up with other candidates. And getting in this late is going to make it harder for Richard Cordray. And some of those candidates will not drop. It's going to be an angry Democrat primary.
So, Darrell, how quickly does Richard Cordray have to catch fire for the other candidates to possibly think about stepping aside, or, like John Husted did, team up with him?
I think the ace that Rich Cordray has is being in Washington, he now has friends in high places, very good friends. Friends with last names like Obama and Biden and Warren. That is the route to lots of money. Rich has never been the strongest campaigner, certainly, out in the field. But getting money, that is going to be important. In this, if you're talking about a 6-way race, or even say a 4-way race, Democrats have been the party of the poor here, kind of, in recent years in Ohio. That pie doesn't split too many ways and leave you with, too big of a chunk of your slice of pumpkins there.
Getting to the 2010 race, that was kind of a wave election in the opposite direction. Democrats got swept out.
Yeah.
Richard Cordray, I think he was believed to be the favorite in that race, got caught up. It was a fairly close race. You think that could be a precursor of what we saw here?
He and Strickland could have won that race had they done better in Cuyahoga County. We were talking upstairs earlier, and I said their problem was they didn't get the Cuyahoga County.
Can Rich Cordray get Northeast Ohio?
I think he can, and the reason is what Darrell just said. He's gone to D.C., he's got some friends that he can now bring with him to help churn up the turnout for this election. I think you may see him as a different candidate than we've ever seen before. I hope some of the effect of D.C. has a way of affecting him. I think he's a hell of a campaigner. I don't think he's the best campaigner, but he does the work. He works hard at it. If we could just make him look a little prettier, he could.
Well, he has spent in D.C., and the diehard Democrats have loved his work with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, Julie, and he left with a bit of controversy by naming his assistant to the top job. It was overturned by a judge, but he went out fighting, I guess you could say. How much does that carry over into a campaign here?
I think that there are still some who are going to be disappointed because they fought so hard for that seat that he left it, was it 6 months early? I think that however, I think that, like Darrell says, with people like Elizabeth Warren who are, helped create that organization, Obama fought to get him. People are paying attention who are in the Democratic base on that, and obviously somebody in Ohio wanted him here and told him to come back. So I think that could be strong for him.
The political marketplace is talking because when he hinted he would get in, you'd think the other Democrats would show signs of leaving. They're not, which means they know something. They suspect that he's not as strong as he once was.
Mm-hmm.
They had to have been polling for him to decide to come back now.
Right.
Internal polling.
Part of it is, they've now been, the other Democrats have now been campaigning for so long, and they've frankly gotten a lot of personal time and fortune invested in it.
Yeah.
Now, if this would have happened back in August, there may have been a lot more deference. But now it's like, dude, I've been out pounding the sod for 6 months now. You're not just going to waltz in and I'm going to leave. But that could easily happen within the next 2 months. And you know it is with at least 2 or 3 of those.
Oh yeah,
candidates.
which means they will drop down. The Democrats who leave that race will drop down into the other statewide offices, which means you'll see contested Democratic primaries for Secretary of State, for auditor, for governor, and they're going to have to spend a lot of money fighting each other before they come hit against the Republicans.
And let's not forget, too, the gender dynamic here. There are three women in this race, a former congresswoman, a city mayor who's very popular. Are they going to be asked to just, be the running mate and let Rich Cordray be at the top of that ticket? Maybe they don't want to do that.
Same holds true as what we talked about with the Republicans, Sam, and that Mike DeWine has been here a long time, kind of an old face for the party. We keep hearing that 2018 is going to be the year of the woman candidate. Would Democrats be better served to have a woman at the top of the ticket than, a leftover from the Strickland era?
Well, I think Democrats, regardless, need a strong candidate. Where I support the women who are in the campaign, but they're not the strongest candidates out there. I don't favor this as a transition year for the Democrats. My recommendation to them is a 5-year plan. But they want to win now, and I understand they want to win now. I've said I'm not sure Rich is the strongest candidate for governor. You've heard me say that. I'm not sure yet. I think they need to build a bench, and building a bench was where they're starting, and then 5 years be ready to really contest for a lot of statewide offices after having put in organizations in the major counties. And their problem is they can't turn out their people in the numbers that they need to turn them out.
But I think there are a lot of women who feel like they've been hearing that for a long, long time, and this is the year of the women. There's the whole #MeToo thing going on nationally, and a couple white men running because they can win is old school thinking, maybe.
All right. Speaking of the Me Too, the sexual harassment and inappropriate behavior scandal remains a big topic of discussion at the State House. This week, House Speaker Cliff Rosenberger said he was disappointed a conservative group did not inform him about allegations against former State Rep Wes Goodman. Goodman, who is married to a woman and promotes natural marriage, resigned his seat last month after admitting to inappropriate sexual behavior with a man in his state office. The Washington Post reported Goodman sexually assaulted an 18-year-old man during a 2015 event in Washington. Rosenberger says GOP officials here in Ohio were not told of that 2015 allegation. And when asked if he should have investigated rumors about Goodman more strongly, Rosenberger said he is not the morality police of House members. Darrell Rowland, to have to answer that question, it's tough days down there right now.
All I can say is thank you for giving us a great headline, Cliff, because it's really drove the web traffic today. So, it's
you can hear the frustration there.
Well, sure, and there are unhappy people in the House caucus. There are unhappy people at the state party headquarters because there are conservative Republicans, many of them associated with Christian groups, so-called Christian groups, who knew about this in the 2015 incident. And word never got back here. Wes Goodman was allowed to run. Nobody was any the wiser back here, at least as far as we know right now. Yep. And a lot of these folks have suddenly not, they've shut up. They're not talking at all. So where does their obligation to, good grief, just the voters, if not their own party, if not the people of Ohio?
Well, there's an interesting dilemma here. For years, people have said, we're tired of the party boss era where one strong party leader decides who can run and who can't. You're in, you're out. And that has largely gone by the wayside. As a result, people like the Speaker of the House or the Senate President or other party leaders have much less leverage to move somebody in or out of a seat because of the decline of party strength.
This goes to the whole, we see it in D.C., members of a legislative body are not regular employees. They're all their own bosses. You can't fire them. The voters fire them. So how do you discipline folks? I mean, you can take away committee spots and leadership positions, that kind of thing.
Right, and the contention of the House leadership is that what they did know about Wes Goodman did not involve any impropriety or illegal activity. They only knew, they had tips from different people that said he wasn't really living the values that he was purporting to have on the surface. Because he was for natural marriage, and meanwhile he was involved with men one way or another. But, you know, so in that way, Cliff Rosenberger is right. I mean, the constituents of Wes Goodman, you know, put him there, not Cliff Rosenberger, but, you know, who inside the conservative movement wasn't sharing this,
Well,
and
we're
why?
seeing the same dynamic at the Congress, right? You have Al Franken, who's grabbing and kissing on the Senate side, and John Conyers, who's naked and grabbing on the House side. And Democrat leaders held these two up as great progressive models. We find out they're not, and they have the same problem, which is their voters sent them to us. We're not their boss. We can't make them resign, although as we're taping now, John Conyers is having a news conference. But this has become a bipartisan problem of the party leaders don't have control of their own members.
But it's been around since time immemorial. True. Why are we so flashing like this is all new? I've been fired, almost fired 2 or 3 times trying to shield people from sexual harassment from other people in the public sector where I've worked most of my life. There are people who have power and they use that power for bad reasons. Now, I'll say to you right now, most people say this is a transformational moment for women. And I hope it is a transformational. But I remember when they said that about civil rights, that 1964 to 1967 was a transformational year for civil rights. And there's always been a itching away at the civil rights gains. I hope it is for women. But I also remember the backlash. And I anticipate the backlash. If we get one weak accuser, we will have a backlash that you wouldn't believe. Because men want to be in this position. Some men want to be in this position. And I hate to say this, some women like them in that position, unfortunately.
Well, my colleague Andrew Welsh-Huggins did a story this week that talked about sort of the employer liability type issues around this. And one of the things was, there is a fear that for women there would be a backlash. Maybe they wouldn't get invited into the boardroom or on that business trip because men would be afraid of anything they would do could be misconstrued. And so I think there's just a large education effort that has to go on.
Yeah. It's all out in the open now, that's for sure. I mean, we thought it was out in the open during the Anita Hill, after the Anita Hill thing, but apparently it went back underground again for whatever reason, but it's back out there now. Let's get to our final off-the-record parting shots. Mark Weaver, we'll start with you.
So as a campaign consultant, I am not the consultant to the official DeWine and Husted committee. I'm advising the outside group securing Ohio's future. Here's what we found out in the last few days. There are a lot of donors who want to give independent expenditure dollars to help this because they're so excited that Mike DeWine and John Husted are now together. They were on the sidelines, these donors, and now they're interested in donating.
Sam.
We are witnessing a transformation and a demise of the transparent democratic process in America. The way legislation is being put together now, no public hearings, no opportunities for people to see the legislation before it's drafted. It's like little boys in the sand drawing up legislation and then they call the play. We're watching, this is the transformational period. It is a sad period in the history of American democracy.
Darrell.
My comments also on the DeWine-Husted alliance. It's intriguing that by every account, these two men, or certainly their two campaigns, did this union themselves. There was no party leader involvement. There was no trying to whittle the field because party leaders hate primaries. That supposedly was what happened back in the 90s when you had, a Bob Taft and a George Voinovich hitting for a collision in that year, and then they went their different ways. It turns out that's a little bit of urban myth as well. Bob Bennett's gotten a little bit too much credit for heading that off over the years.
And Julie.
What I was going to say is that one of the intriguing issues to me to watch is a resignation oftentimes ends an inquiry. And when all of these people who are accused leave their jobs, then we don't get many of the public records or the real details. So I'm not sure you always want to call for resignation.
As George Thorogood said, that classic line, don't feed me no lines and keep your hands to yourself. That should be the theme song in every office building around America right now. That is Columbus on the Record for this week. Check us out online. You can continue the conversation on Facebook and on Twitter, and each show is on demand at our website, wosu.org. For our crew and for our panel, I'm Mike Thompson. Have a good week.